All right, let's dive into a story that starts with this incredible act of compassion, but wow, it quickly spirals into a high stakes theological trial. It's this amazing account of a miracle, a shocking accusation, and then a stunning defense of divine authority. We're going to unpack how this one single moment just unfolds into something so much bigger. So, to really get the gravity of what happens, you first have to let this number sink in. 38 years. For nearly 4 decades, a man had been an invalid, just waiting for a miracle. I mean, can you imagine the weight of that time? The kind of hopelessness that must have set in? That's the scene. That's the backdrop for our story. And this is the question that just ignites the entire conflict. How on earth can an act that ends almost 40 years of suffering be seen as a crime? That very paradox is really at the heart of everything we're about to talk about. Okay, so our story begins in Jerusalem, at a place filled with both desperation and, well, a little bit of hope, where a simple encounter sets off this chain of events that challenges the very foundations of religious law and authority. So picture the scene, the pool of Bethesda. The belief was that the waters there had healing powers, so we'd have these crowds of sick and disabled people just gathering, waiting for their chance. It's a place literally humming with anticipation and, decades of disappointment. So in the middle of this crowd, Jesus walks up to the man who's been there for 38 years, and he asks him this incredibly direct question. Not, hey, what's wrong with you, or how can I help? But a question that cuts right to the chase. Do you want to get well? And then comes the command. No big ritual, no ceremony, just 3 simple instructions. And the text says that instantly, the man was cured. After 38 years of being paralyzed, he stands up, picks up the very mat he'd been lying on, and just walks away. It's an absolutely astonishing moment. But this is where the story takes a very sharp turn. You see, this miracle didn't happen on just any day. It happened on the Sabbath, the holy day of rest. And that one little detail changes everything. It shifts the entire focus from an act of mercy to an alleged crime. The celebration is basically cut short by a very serious accusation. Now, what's really fascinating here is who the leaders confront. They don't go after Jesus, the one who did the healing. Nope, they go after the man who was just healed. Their focus isn't the miracle, it's the rule. The fact that he's carrying his mat, which they saw as work, forbidden on the Sabbath, suddenly becomes way more important than the fact that he can even walk at all. So this brings us to this deep conflict of interpretation. On one hand, you have a life-altering act of mercy. On the other, a super strict reading of religious law. The exact same event is seen as either this profound miracle or a public crime. The man's defense is pretty simple. Hey, the one who healed me told me to do it. So the leader's focus immediately shifts. They're not interested in the man anymore. They want to find the person who instigated this violation of the Sabbath. The hunt is on. Eventually, Jesus is identified, and what follows is less of a conversation and more like a courtroom defense. He's not just a healer anymore. He's now on trial for his actions and, more importantly, for the reasoning behind them. This is his defense, and it is absolutely stunning. He doesn't deny working on the Sabbath. Instead, he claims he's working in perfect sync with God the Father, who, by the way, doesn't stop working just because it's the Sabbath. He's basically claiming he has a divine work permit. And whoa, this defense just blows the case wide open. The issue is no longer about carrying a mat. By calling God his own Father in this way, Jesus is, in their eyes, claiming equality with God. The charge just went from a misdemeanor Sabbath violation to blasphemy, a capital offense. So, to defend himself, Jesus lays out the whole foundation for his authority. He's not some rogue agent, he argues. He acts in perfect unity with the Father. He claims the Father has given him the authority to judge, to be honored, and even to give life itself. I mean, these are just monumental claims. Now, according to the law back then, a claim this extraordinary requires witnesses. So Jesus, continuing his defense, proceeds to call 4 of them to the stand, so to speak, to testify on his behalf. He structures his evidence with the precision of a legal argument, just building his case piece by piece. He calls a human witness, he presents his own actions as evidence, he claims testimony from God the Father himself, and finally, from the very scriptures his accusers hold so dear. First up is John the Baptist. Jesus reminds his accusers that they themselves thought John was a credible prophet, and John had already pointed to Jesus as someone far, far greater. Then, brilliantly, Jesus presents the very crime he's being accused of, the healing, as his second witness. He basically argues that the miracle itself is proof that he was sent by the Father. He turns their accusation into his evidence. The third witness is the most profound, God the Father. Jesus says that the Father has testified about him, even if they haven't literally heard his voice or seen his form. It's an appeal to a deeper, kind of spiritual confirmation. And for his final witness, he turns to their most sacred authority, the scriptures. He tells them that the very texts they spend all their time studying are ultimately not about a list of rules, but about him. So after presenting his defense and his four witnesses, Jesus doesn't wait for a verdict from his accusers. Instead, in this masterful rhetorical move, he turns the tables and delivers a verdict on them. This is just an incredible twist. He tells them he's not going to be the one to accuse them before the Father. Their accuser, he says, is Moses, the very lawgiver they claim to follow, the prophet on whom all their hopes are based. And here it is, the final devastating challenge. Jesus claims that Moses actually wrote about him. So if they truly believed Moses, they would believe him. By rejecting him, they are actually rejecting the very prophet they claim to uphold. It leaves them in this completely inescapable bind. This entire encounter just leaves us with this powerful question. Jesus presents four completely distinct forms of testimony: human, empirical, divine, and scriptural. For his accusers, it wasn't enough, which really makes you wonder, at what point does evidence or testimony cross that line and become accepted as truth?